like Michael, Sai, and Oge to have first stab at it, and you can include some of the connections between academics and service as well. But I'd like you to start sharing some of the skills, the most important skills you think you've learned through the service experience or here at school. Like, what are the takeaways? What are the most important takeaways? And then also weave in the last question. So Michael, hit it.
I'd say the most important skill or trait perhaps skill that I learned or trait that I acquired in my work with reading partners is that I now find that when I am committing myself to, say, extracurricular opportunities or community outreach pursuits, I make sure to stop and consider what my role is in that community and how my background in private education, my attendance at Poly, as an independent school affects my participation in reading partners. So for now 6 years, I've been attending a private school, and I find that I must, in my work outside of school, reconcile the inherent privileges that come with my attendance here with my work outside of Poly, and so that has spurred me to further engage with reading partners and other organizations like it to sort of maintain some sort of like ideological consistency in terms of equity and justice. More basic, I guess, is my interest in education going forward. So I very much, through reading partners, have become more invested in public education, and so it has become more priority for me as I continue my education in high school and beyond.
While working at the IRC, and one would be being able to advocate for yourself, and another being having empathy for people who don't have the same experience as you. So advocacy comes from, I got into working through in the IRC through the back door, so they didn't necessarily need a high schooler there, and they shouldn't. I probably shouldn't be there, honestly, because I'm not old enough. But being a high schooler and being able to advocate and ask if they need help and what they need help with, and providing the skills that I've learned at Poly, managing my time, being organized, being polite when it comes to working with refugees, honestly, because they, of course, are in a really vulnerable position. But I think being empathetic is the most important thing that I've learned while working at the IRC, because in my opinion, refugee and immigration issues are not political issues, they're human issues. And this kind of weaves into the first question you asked about school. So 2 weeks ago, I put together a panel of 4 people for our school, and it included a DACA recipient, an Iranian refugee, a loyal law immigrant professor, and a representative from Mir's List, which is another nonprofit that works in the LA area that helps with resettlement of refugees. And the biggest thing that I wanted the Poly high school students to take away from it was that being empathetic to other people's stories is the biggest thing you can do as a person. So even if you don't agree with political or policy issues that are happening, these people go through a lot, and no one chooses to become a refugee or immigrant. No one chooses to leave their homes. So while working at the IRC, I've learned that being empathetic and understanding these human issues is the most important thing for me and for all of my peers, and there is no other way that I don't think this world can work.
Beautiful. So before we move on, can you talk a little bit about any connection? You mentioned something about, before you say, but about AP US History or Western Civ. Is there a connection?
There's 2 connections. So I wrote my AP US History on the 1965 immigration, or research paper on the 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act, which is what allowed my grandparents to come to the United States. And basically I examined the intent behind the act, since it made America super diverse and brought in all these people from Asia and Africa, but I soon realized that the intent was never to make America diverse, and basically lawmakers were hoping that more skilled people from Europe would come in, which didn't end up happening. And then Western Civ with Mr. Carragher, I had the opportunity to interview an Afghani refugee, which was who's my age, and she lives in Washington, D.C. And it was a phone call, and it was a really, like, I don't even know how to describe it. It was a really emotional experience, just hearing her story and understanding how similar we were. I know we talked like for 10 minutes out of the conversation about Bollywood, which is, I'm Indian and she's Afghani, but like it was just such a like personal human connection that really furthered my interest in immigration and refugee policy. But it's all connected back to Poly, and they're both very parallel.
Okay.
Okay. So with my work, I think there's two aspects to my work. One is the educational aspect, which also comes with the research behind sickle cell. And two is the social aspect that comes to sickle cell. Sickle cell is seen as something that only impacts African Americans, and so what I've learned is, touching on what Sai said, is to advocate for myself, and that comes with also learning and listening and just trying to hear out the stories of other people, their experiences with that stigma. A lot of patients, they go to hospitals and they're seen as drug addicts, and it's simply because they're experiencing so much constant pain that they probably know what they need more than any doctor does, because that is a lifetime condition, but those stigmas prevent them from getting the medications that they do need. And those stigmas also mean that sickle cell is one of the least researched diseases in America. And so just being able to hear out and listening to the experiences of patients is one of the biggest things I've learned. And then the second thing would go similar to the previous question about education. I'm really interested in biology, specifically I've been looking into stem cell research, and so I did a program last year where I worked with stem cell research, and one of the things that our leaders told us was that it's easy to get lost in the mechanics of working with cells and dropping stuff constantly, and it's very mechanical. But then when you see the human side of the science that you're doing and the research that you're doing, it really does make an impact on how you're making connections between the things that you're dropping in and how it's impacting another person. And so just seeing those connections was really something that I learned through my experience, and how this all ties in together, and how those social aspects aren't really separated from those, I guess, technical aspects that we would think they are, but they're really much closer intertwined than we realize.